to Powerful Money Tools LLC. At Powerful Money Tools, we are here to prepare for your future. We want to talk about financial freedom. Financial freedom is budgeting, credit building, and also financial education. So, once again, welcome to Powerful Money Tools LLC. We can't wait to help you in your financial future.
Hi, my name is June Rochelle, and I own Detroit Couture. We are a fashion forward women's boutique, and we offer friendly sizes from small all the way up to 3X women's sizes, very generously fit, very great quality. I actually have on one of our pieces today. It's called the Cuffed Up. It's in gray, burgundy, and black and olive, and it actually has a lot of stretch and give. So listen, in this time, we try to make sure that first of all, it's quality and customer service that we offer our clients. And I'm so glad to have this opportunity to share with you. So go and visit us at DetroitCouture.com.
And good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending upon where you are around the world. I am Marcus Holmes, and I'm excited to bring you yet another installment from our love shows with a brand new edition for the love of justice. Have you voted today? I don't know what area you are in around the world, but here in the Metro Detroit area, it is the primary election day. And this morning, when I got out to vote, I was one of the first six in my precinct. I believe that people forget how important primary elections are that are non-presidential elections, and even the primaries that aren't leading you to the gubernatorial election specifically. These primary elections are important. And if you will recall, Love and Stuff began its journey all around social activism. So, in our fourth installment of shows, of course, we have the Love and Stuff show, which comes every Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then Sports Talk with Kamal and Felix followed that up as our first additional show. Then Love in the Scriptures with Darren Williams, which we'll see his commercial in a bit. And now the fourth Love show, which is For the Love of Justice. And one of my favorite legal minds is joining us to walk us into some areas that maybe you aren't thinking about as you are walking through these primary elections. And even if the primary election has happened in your city or state or township, you have relatives around the country. And we're going to hear a little bit of why it's important to build coalition around your family and friends to get them actively engaged. You are tuning in to Love and Stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm, yeah. Born and dead, saved by love. Count my blessing from above.
You know, it has never been lost on me the importance of voting. I grew up being the youngest of five, hearing stories from my dad about poll tricks, which I didn't even believe that that was a real thing. Of him going to one polling location and them telling him in his words, "Oh, nig, you're in the wrong place." And because he was a smart guy, the polling tricks that they would ask him about adding and subtraction, addition and subtraction, he could answer these questions. And I would sit and hear these stories almost in disbelief that there would be people in the world who would suppress the vote of people. But do you realize that same type of suppression is happening today? And so I have felt the weight, the call, if you will, the burden to get to the poll, the sacred franchise, the sacred opportunity to vote, to lift my voice and not sing as I normally would, but to lift my voice and vote, that my vote had a voice, and that I was called into public engagement to use my voice to speak. And so I'm hoping that as we begin this installment of love shows around our love for justice, that you will hear that call, that it will resonate loudly within your heart and your mind around voting and around how important it is for you and your family and everyone within your circle of influence to get out and vote, to lift every voice and vote. Joining me now is one of the co hosts of this segment that we will be featuring as we move forward into farther into this election cycle and farther into public engagement around lifting your voice is Valerie Colbert-Osamuede, who I believe is a brilliant legal mind, one of the brilliant legal minds of our time. And I so enjoy having discussion with her. You will see her passion and why the Love and Stuff community is so blessed and so appreciative to have her as part of our community. And I hope some of that passion rubs off on you. It certainly has rubbed off on me. And I hope it rubs off on you in a way that it calls you to action. So help me welcome Valerie Colbert-Osamuede. Hey, Valerie Colbert-Osamuede, thank you for
Oh,
joining me.
Marcus, thank you for the very generous introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, every word, every bit of it is true. You know, some of my best times in dialogue with you are around these issues, and you have a way with bringing light to issues that I think is not only welcomed in our Love and Stuff community, Val, but needed. I believe where we started several years ago on this journey is where we still are today. Getting people to realize how important it is to be actively engaged. If we say we want a world that has love and we want to increase the amount of love, it's not just going to happen if we sit back. If we want equity, if we want social justice, it's not just going to happen. People are showing us they'll take away the right to vote before they'll give it to us. We're going to have to be actively engaged. And so I'm excited to have you here. Of course, I've been wanting to get you here, and Val is a busy person. We'll have to go into her resume another time. But let me tell you, she's a busy person and a brilliant mind. And so thank you, Val, for making time to be with us in the Love and Stuff community. And we know sometimes you drop through sports talk because she's also a college football fan of gold, green, and white. Almost time. And so we love and adore you here in this community. Listen, I had not at last week, I tried to best I could walk through the various states that are having primary elections. And it wasn't lost on me that abortion would be on the ballot, but you raised something in the conversation earlier, and I just want to start there, and then I'm going to turn it to you. I didn't really look at the landscape of if abortion is taken out of the Constitution in Kansas and in Missouri, all of the states around them are going to have a hard road, and many of them have a lot of Black and brown people who can't just catch a flight. I was reading something earlier today where someone drove 9 hours, Val, to get to Wichita, Kansas today to get their procedure done because the fear that they wouldn't be able to do it. And think of the number of people who couldn't drive 9 hours or who couldn't
drive. No health care, no time off work. No child care if they have other children. Mm-hmm. So all of those factors factor into access to abortion. Mm-hmm. And, I know there are lots of people on here. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to add those few things to the conversation as well. Mm-hmm. I kind of really wanted to start with just encouraging people to vote. Mm-hmm. President Obama had this quote, and he said, and this is particularly to our young people, mm-hmm. You wouldn't let your grandparents pick your playlist. Okay. Why would you let them pick your representatives who will determine your future?
Wow.
Why would people that are 70 and 80, and I'm not saying that they're not progressive and forward thinking 70 and 80-year-olds, mm-hmm. but they are picking people who represent you, who will be on courts, who will be attorney generals, who will be prosecutors, who will be city council people, because that's the group that's going out there voting. Okay. Mm-hmm. And these people, who are of a certain age, who have lived a great deal of life, are picking to reflect decisions on your life as young people. And, there's a whole lot of discussion, and that's something maybe down the road, Marcus, about the aging of our representatives. There are a lot of people that are on our national scene that are in their 80s. Mm-hmm. And some of them may have some cognitive issues. A lot of them don't. Mm-hmm. Some of them are still dynamic folks, because I am not an ageist, mm-hmm. but those are things to think about. What values you still need to look at the representatives to see what values do they have that reflect you. So there could be young people that don't reflect your values either. Yeah. So, but the important thing is, I think as young people, because there's so many shifting things that's important to our young people. Climate, the whole climate thing. I was listening today, I'm always listening to something, Marcus. Yeah. I was listening today with this young man a man who does recycling for HP cartridges. He was just saying how different kids, young people are today. In my generation, nobody really thought about recycling. It wasn't really, was there, but it wasn't there. Nothing to throw something away and to think it was going to magically disappear. And he was just saying how his children would not think about throwing a plastic bottle in the trash, that they will put it in a recycling bin. And the other person was saying how his children cut off lights. We didn't. Our parents used to say, "What, you lighting up the neighborhood? Are you opening up the door to warm up?" So things like that are important. Climate change, and that's another very good thing for us to talk about in the future. Outside of some of the hot button issues, even though climate is a hot button issue, and I think in our communities we need to know about the climate inequities, where we place things in brown and black communities. Those are all things that you can be voting on and that you should have a voice to. And so again, why would you want someone my age or older to be picking what's important to you as a young person, and what is important going forward in the future? And certainly climate change is a big one. So so when you think of that, and I was just thinking of that as a segue, and why it's so important for us to vote. Not only we always hear that people did die for the right to vote, defending this right, and that's always to me one of the most important reasons to vote, because blood was shed for that right. And if it wasn't important, they wouldn't be trying to take it away. And then another one is to vote to allocate federal money to your region. We know that money can be used for education, youth programs, healthcare, veterans, creating jobs, again, the environment. When it is not lost that when neighborhoods and communities vote, they get more attention from candidates and office holders. They are also likely to visit, listen to communities, and listen to communities who participate in election, and that also can translate into federal dollars to communities. Because their voices are being heard. So we need to think about that. We need to think about voting for those who cannot vote. For example, our kids, our young children, that things that are going to impact them in their lifetime, that before they can even become voters, will be etched in stone, or could be etched in stone. Those are things that we need to be able to vote our children, those people who are in this country seeking to become citizens, all of those things. We need to be thinking about that collectively. And it just honors, again, our history and our right to vote, to get out there and cast your vote. And to be, and not to let others decide for you. So I wanted to use that quote from President Obama, because when I first saw it, I said, wow, that makes a lot of sense. That is a good reason for young people to get out and vote, because if you're an 18-year-old and you're able to vote, you surely don't want your 85-year-old grandmother or grandfather or uncle or aunt deciding what's important for you.
Yes.
So that's one of the things.
Yes. We're talking with Valerie Colbert-Osamuede, and I don't know if you can already hear her passion. She's passionate about this, and this is a new edition in the Love and Stuff shows, For the Love of Justice, that she is going to be hosting along with Brenda Bracewell, who we wish well, who's been having some health challenges, but we wish her well. Val, I want to ask you this question. I read somewhere in Kansas, because one of the things you said that resonated with me is, the right to vote wouldn't be important if people weren't trying to take it away. And I read that in Kansas, they have been sending out text messages all day to about 30,000 people, urging them to vote yes, but for the proposal, but really for people to have freedom and productive rights, it's to vote no. So they are being deceptive in how they worded it on the ballot, and how they are couching it to people who they don't believe will actually read to understand, to get them to vote opposite than what they might want to do. I want to talk to you a little bit about that, about becoming an engaged and educated voter. And I just want to say hello to folks that have joined us: Reginald Milton, James Arnold, Daisy Simmons, Bilal Muhammad Walker. Congratulations on your wedding. Angie B, Vicki Johnson Williams, Phyllis Lloyd, Lee Meadows, Felix Holmes. Thank you all for joining us. We're talking with Val Colbert-Osamuede. How important is it to get engaged and educate yourself on the issues that are coming before you?
Oh, it is extremely important. One of the things that you just said that's so important is wording. If you know the issues, you will know that no, that's not what that means. And there's so many sites to go to now that you can, can find out about issues, that you can find out about what's in the legislation. I mean, everybody is not like me that was just going to want to sit down and read the actual legislation, and that's understandable, but you do want to know what the essence of it is, what's important about it, what's the pros and the cons. And there are a lot of good sites. I would urge people to go to NPR, because NPR, National Public Radio, has a site because they are generally very neutral in what they put out there, and I listen to them often. Podcasts are very nice too, but when you're talking about just getting voter information, there's so many sites out there, and I'll look for some of them. They're not in front of me right now, but I'll throw some out there at the end of or maybe you can put them in your notes, Marcus, later. But there's a lot of good places to go where you can see the issues, the candidates, their interviews, their answers to questions. There's no reason why anybody can't be educated on issues if you really want to be educated on an issue or a candidate, and you can really see the history of how a candidate has voted, things that they've said that's contradictory. Those are the things that you kind of want to look at. But you're very correct, Marcus, the way things are worded, you might think, oh, okay, really yes is not the proper thing for you to do. It's really a no. So it's very important that you get out there and get information from websites, from pamphlets, from your library, for wherever you get your information from. It's easy to get. It's easy to get and to understand the issues. Very easy.
Speaking of some of the issues, I don't know where you want to delve in. If you want to talk about abortion, judicial, you want to talk about payday loans, wherever you want to start.
Okay. So I'm going to start on the hot button issue real quick, which is reproductive rights. And a lot of it is talking about, people just seem to hone in on abortion rights, which is important. But I want to just talk a little bit about that, and then we can get into some of the stuff that's happening around, even within our state. So reproductive rights include your legal ability to make decisions about when and if you want to have a child. You might also hear this is called reproductive autonomy or bodily autonomy. It means you have the power of the law to protect you and to allow you the right to make your own choices about birth control, pregnancy, and having children. And also abortion, of course, is included in this. It's the legal access to safe procedures to end a pregnancy. And it is one of the reproductive rights, but there are others, and I would just kind of want people to think about that, because actually they're all under attack. Even abortion is up there, but these are all under attack. Sex education, that is a reproductive right and a freedom. Family planning, birth control and contraceptives, emergency contraceptives. I was talking to my daughter because she knew I was telling her I was getting ready to come on this, and she said, "Oh, Mom, one of the things," and that's a person I'm going to try to get on here too, somewhat generational. She was saying that we actually have some pharmacists who are not letting women buy birth control or the Plan B. Birth control, or what's called the morning after, because it's against their religious beliefs. Okay, so this is the things that's going on. There was a national, the Congress or the House of Representatives actually introduced several bills, one of which was passed in the Senate, which was the protection of marriage protective marriage, which was there to protect, legally gay marriages and interracial marriages. But one of the things that also was introduced, which died in the Senate, was contraceptives. The
Wow.
right and the ability for the federal government to stand behind a woman's right to contraceptives. And the whole reason why contraceptives are available to us right now is because of a case that was brought before the Supreme Court, and that dealt with a married couple
Hmm.
deciding to use contraceptives to not have children, family planning. So
Mhm.
that's all a part of of uh, of reproductive right, assisted reproduction.
Mhm.
People that have to have IVF.
Mhm.
And in vitro fertilization. That's
Mhm.
also, and I
Mhm.
think we talked a bit about this when I was on earlier with the leaked opinion.
Mhm.
Um, when I was talking about earlier how when people have the in vitro and they have fertilizing several eggs, and the decision may have to be made to terminate one of the eggs in order for the other to be viable and to actually come to delivery. So
Mhm.
that's also a part of reproductive freedom.
Mhm.
Sterilization or permanent birth control. And for men, men always think of this as just a woman's thing, but vasectomies,
Mhm.
birth control, they also sex education for them too.
Mhm.
Um, the STD prevention planning, infertility treatments and counseling. It's the same thing for men. All of that is reproductive freedom. Even the whole ideal about HIV. Those are all reproductive rights that are at stake. I want
Mhm.
you to know they are at stake. And all only thing that we're seeing, of course, is abortion. But that is a woman's right to choose, and a man,
Mhm.
if they're doing that together. But it
Mhm.
cannot be lost that in this country has the highest maternal mortality rate in the industrialized countries, the United States of America. And that actually impacts Black and Brown women even more. Okay. And it has increased since 2019. It has increased. And think about it. We have no paid maternity leave. Okay. We have no universal health care. We have no subsidized child care. We have it's hard to access mental health care. We have one of the worst foster care systems in the industrialized world. And this is what we want to implement forced birth into. All of these things that society does not provide, that a woman may say, okay, maybe I will have this child.
Mhm.
If I can get, health care, if I can get daycare, if I can
Mhm.
get a guaranteed amount of time off work, all of these things are under attack.
Mhm.
And these are primarily a woman is going to have to make those decisions. It is the woman that will bear the brunt of that.
Mhm.
Okay. So whether or not you're pro-life or pro-choice, I don't believe that people have the right to impose their religious beliefs on your
Mhm.
choice. That is your choice between you, God, and your doctor.
Mhm.
And so these are all the things that we need to think about when we're voting for individuals that are going to be in our state legislatures, that are going to be our attorney generals, that are going to be our prosecutors, that are going to be at our U.S. Senators and Congress people. These are what we need to be thinking about when we are one issue anyway. There's so many more, but these are the things that we need to be thinking about when we're talking about reproductive rights and freedoms of people. So if we take a look at Kansas,
Mhm.
and I did just want to say this about reproductive freedom and abortion. So currently today, there are 14 states that have outright banned abortion.
Mhm.
There are 3 states where those bans have been blocked. So there's some judicial action happening. Okay. there are 2 states with a ban or severe restrictions. Okay, so that means 6 weeks. Maybe that it's illegal, but you can only get an abortion after 6 weeks. You can't get an abortion. A time when many women don't even know they're pregnant. Okay,
Right. Right.
um, there are 11 states, which includes Michigan, where abortion is threatened, and then we have 20 states where abortion is legal, okay, including the District of Columbia. However, that is subject to, what happens in the federal. They're not a state,
Right.
so uh, 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 the federal House of Representatives or whomever can make a decision for DC that may change that. It may make it illegal in the District of Columbia.
Mhm.
So those are some things that should be thought about, as it relates to abortion and abortion rights. And today, Kansas is the first state to vote on the right to abortion since the Supreme Court overruled Roe v. Wade. And it's just interesting because Kansas is a very it is currently the current law is highly regulated.
Mhm.
It's not just a free for all, so to speak, as people
Mhm.
might want to say.
Mhm.
You still have to have they have waiting periods, parental consent, the ultrasound viewing that you have to see and view before you have an abortion, the heartbeat that has to be echoed out, for the woman to hear. And a lot of women say that's to shame you and whatever. But all of these things are in place under the current Kansas law. So
Mhm.
it's not like it's without any kind of restrictions. It
Mhm.
is just not an out and out illegal to get an abortion in Kansas.
Mhm.
So Missouri is just a throws what is it? I can't
Stone's throw.
Thank you. I can never really say that from that, in
Mhm.
terms of borders. And so, and you think about not only if it is legal, becomes legal and it passes, you still have the burden on the state for all of those people, even like in Illinois and all of these places that are legal here around where we live. And Illinois is the only state where it is legal, and, around from Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. So if you think about and even Missouri coming into Illinois, when you think about that fact, what does that mean for the women who live in that state? With the extra added burden of people who are coming from other states. So all of that is important when you're talking about, the issues as it relates to the abortion laws, or what is on the ballot as it relates to reproductive freedom, and particularly the abortion laws.
Mhm.
So those are some of the things that's interesting that's happening as it relates to that.
Let me jump in and bow and just welcome some more folks. Terrell Childs, Kevin Scott have joined us. We're talking with Valerie Colbert-Osamuede, and as you can see, she's sharing some great information with us on reproductive health, because a lot of us may have thought we're just talking abortion here, but it's a gateway to so many other services that people rely on in their decision making. And I, from the love of stuff, agree with Val. I want everyone to have a chance of life, every child. But I don't believe I get to legislate what a woman does with her body. I do believe that is a very personal decision between her and her maker. If she believes that there is a maker, I believe there is. I don't. I want every baby to be birthed, and that for some, I've been told that is just a horrific statement. Some have told me, Val, because what about the woman who's raped, and what about the woman who is at risk of losing her life to carry a baby to full term? There are a number of
Yes.
things that I was told, hey, you should consider this when you say that. And of course, I'm considering it from a male perspective because I can't have a baby. I don't know what that is, right? But I
Mhm.
do want every child to have a chance of life. I just don't believe I should legislate what a woman does with her body. I believe if there is a cross to bear, and she has to explain bearing that cross. She has to stand before Jesus and explain that to him. I think it puts me in the seat of God, and I'm never qualified to be in that seat. That's how I feel about it. But I am concerned about um, where a mother's health is at risk. Black and brown women experience more childbirth uh, complications and death than other folks do. And what about the doctor who has to make that decision? Does he break the law to save the life of a woman? Does he break the law if it's a miscarriage? At what
Yeah,
point is it a miscarriage?
yeah.
All of these gray areas that I'm not sure people are thinking. I think they're caught in the passion of pro-life or pro-choice, and there are so many variables that go into that. How do you wade through that, Val? How do you wade through that?
So I think again, when you're you really have to look at more than just a woman having an unwanted pregnancy, you know, an unplanned pregnancy, because people try to highlight it in just that very narrow way of, I've had, sex, I don't want to have this baby, and some people think, well, it's not a form of birth control. Well, they often utilize that and say that as an argument that is some kind of form of birth control, but it really is not, or it should not be. And I think for the majority of women, it is not. It is an economic decision that a lot of women have to make. There are women who have children who decide to abort a child, because they have children and it's unplanned, and they already are having a tough time as it relates to resources and the ability to provide for that family. So, there's so many other things. And one of the things that you hit upon that a lot of people are not realizing, again, you have these states, particularly in Texas, I think it's also on the Alabama and Georgia laws, where people can be held criminally liable. And that includes the husband that takes you across state lines, or the husband that takes you to get the abortion. That includes the doctors that decide, okay, I come in and I'm not, I have a miscarriage. I'm having a miscarriage. And my doctor, my OBGYN could have certainly have documentation that I became pregnant, that I've been carrying this child, and then there's no longer a heartbeat, or it's not viable any longer, and the fetus is gone, and it has to be removed from the body. Now, there's a natural, very painful way of expelling a fetus from the body, but that's why we have D&Cs, and that is a way in which to medically remove that fetus from a woman's uterus, and to do it safely, comfortably, with minimum harm to the woman, and consideration, of course, of future fertility and all of those kinds of things. And so, if you can believe that, as of January, a woman could do that without any problems. Now, you have doctors that are fearful because, what happens if somebody says, oh no, she was having that wasn't a miscarriage, that wasn't an abortion. What happens in those situations where you have now doctors who know medically it is best to do it that way, but now, considering their license, malpractice, jail time, all of those things that are just incredible to me. It's one thing to legislate and to want to weigh the viability of a fetus outside of when is it viable. It's quite another thing when you are now making it a crime for a doctor to give a medical procedure to someone who needs it and wants it. I was listening the other day where uh, there was a woman talking about how, she had to make the decision because she had a child that was going to be severely handicapped and would not last outside of the womb. And if she did give birth, would not last very long, and the child would be in grave pain, and so there was a decision between for her, she and her husband, to terminate the pregnancy, not something they had wanted and planned and were delighted when they got pregnant. And then the issues when they were doing prenatal visits and all of that, this turned up testing and all of that. And they made the decision to terminate that pregnancy. And she was making a point where she said, I went to my doctor. There was this community that was allowed me to go to Planned Parenthood to do this, and she was just talking about how she could do all of that legally, but of course now she would not be able to do that. I was listening to a woman who had, again, she and her husband had planned a pregnancy, and in Texas, and like 6 months ago or whatever, she was able to have in January or so, I want to say December, she was able to have a DNC because the baby was no longer viable. She ended up getting pregnant again. Okay. And several months later, same thing. She and her husband planned it, same thing. This time, she could not get a DNC.
Wow.
She was talking about the pain that she went through for days and days, because the doctors were like, we just can't do it. We can't do it. And so she and her husband are actually saying, they have put off planning a family in Texas. And they're actually saying when they get ready to try again, they may relocate, so that if, because obviously she's obviously prone to that, so that if that happens again, hey, I'm gonna be in an environment where it is legal, where a doctor could actually plan and provide this service to me. One other thing, there may become a time when there's a shortage of surgeons that can actually have been taught the procedure, and this is necessary when you are trying to save the life of a mother. And those are the few exceptions some places have. When the life of a mother is at stake. So those are some of the things that are that you need to look at when you're talking about laws that ban abortion in entirely. There are other reproductive freedoms that are impacted as it relates to that decision and that law, banning that procedure.
Yeah.
There's other things
Yeah.
that connect to that.
And it made me think, and we're talking to Val Colbert-Osamuede. Thank you, Eunice Hunter, for joining us. It made me think while you were talking about that last couple, think of the number of, especially Black and brown women that can't relocate, that don't have other options. And maybe
Right.
they will have to go underground
Right.
and find underground options because
Right.
they won't be able to travel. And
Right.
if you block up that gateway from the Oklahomas and Texas, where people drove 9 hours today to get to Kansas, if Kansas and Missouri are blocked up and all they can do is get to Illinois, think about the number of people that won't be able to travel that far and what other
Right.
things that they might do that would put them in worse condition or subject them to some
Exactly.
criminal behavior. It's almost creating a new pipeline to prison almost, because there are people that
Right.
would seek to still do what they want to exercise in their choice. You're right. We
Right.
got to see
Exactly.
who is on the side of what is best for women. And you're right. Kansas already has a very restrictive process and law around it. So I'll be watching with bated breath, I think, to see what happens tonight in Kansas. What else is happening
Yeah.
around the country? I
Yeah.
know you got so many other things to share with us.
So, of course, like you said, the spotlight, of course, was abortion. But one of the things that is very important are Secretary of State elections that are happening all across this country. Now, you might say, oh, why is that important? Well, if you think about it, I have something here that says in 47 states, all except Alaska, Hawaii, and Utah, the Secretary of State is among the top executive offices in the state. But
Mhm.
what's most important, and I think what came out during the 2020 election is
Mhm.
that Secretary of States have oversight over elections and voter rolls.
Mm.
Okay. And so we have the big lie that has been told of this massive voter fraud. And we if you've been following the January 6th hearings, another thing you may want to talk about later on, Marcus, is one of the things they talked about. One segment of that was the big lie and how elected officials in these states help to either advance it or to shut it down.
Mhm.
Okay. And so one big fight was primary was the Georgia fight, which,
Mhm.
that particular Secretary of State, and his name escapes me now, I had it written down, but that particular Secretary of State um, was a Trump supporter.
Mhm.
He really was a Trump supporter, and basically he stood up to Trump and basically said there's no election fraud in Georgia,
Mhm.
and he would not allow them to steal the election.
Mhm.
That's Trump's thing, steal the election. He wouldn't
Mhm.
allow them to steal the election, and he
Mhm.
actually testified in one of those hearings of
Mhm.
all of the things that had happened. And so today we have um, all of these Secretary of State elections around the country. The elections are in Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Georgia, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, Nevada, uh, New Mexico, North Dakota, Ohio, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Vermont, Washington, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. And the states that really pop out that are having, very contentious is Arizona, because that was a place that Trump actually squeaked, Biden actually kind of squeaked by, and they had a bunch of election lies there. They actually did recounts and all of that stuff. And if it wasn't for those state really Democrats that stood the line and told the line and stood up to these election lies, who knows what would have happened.
Right.
But there is a gubernatorial race there in Arizona, with Trump backing one candidate and Pence backing another one, and then Republican, and I'm okay. I won't show my politics, but there you go. So either one of them are going to be in a runoff, in the fall in November. So again, a very important state, not only because of the Secretary of State, and that Secretary of State is in fact,
Mhm.
they have a lot of momentum about the big lie. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then, like I said, you had Georgia, you have Alabama, and you have Michigan, and you have Ohio. Those are some and Wisconsin. Those are
That's
some
right.
very key states. And Arizona is a swing state.
Mhm.
So imagine having a governor that is a Trump loyalist and a Secretary of State that's a Trump loyalist. Can you imagine what would happen in the election if a Democrat was deemed to be winning?
Mhm.
What kind of lie that's going to be held? So the Secretary of State elections in 2020 are an election that virtually went unnoticed, as you know. But since 2020, no more. And
Mhm.
it is very important that you elect people that are going to safeguard democracy with a little
Mhm.
d.
Mhm.
We have to safeguard democracy. And
Mhm.
so you got to look at those candidates. Are those candidates who have been out there shouting the big lie when we know from all across party lines that, Republicans may not be saying it, but they know
Mhm.
that there was no election fraud.
Right.
Absolutely no election fraud. But the ways in which these people are trying to formulate and change things, they want to change it where, the governor or the state doesn't certify. It's just the legislature. I mean, and you can't appeal anything.
Mhm.
This is some of the things that they are trying to do in order, yes, to steal the election,
Mhm.
to steal the vote, your precious vote. And
Mhm.
so you don't need to have people like that in office. So the
Mhm.
Secretary of State
Mhm.
is elections across this country
Mhm.
are very important. There's primaries that will obviously the election will take place in November between whatever the Republican candidate is and the Democratic candidate. But for sure, you got a lot of these states that have Trump supporters of that big lie that are going to be on that ballot, and you also have people that are running for council seats,
Mhm.
local elections, who believe that lie. So you need to look at your local, even from the local, elections, people that we are putting in office as our city council people, city managers, city planners, all of those people you need to be looking at and seeing where they stand in terms of access to voting and the ability to for people to vote early and not often, but early, and those kinds of things. That the Secretary of State elections are very crucial for the 2022 midterms, and really gearing up for 2024, the elections in 2024 for presidency. Because when you have those kinds of things, people in place, if you have people that are have your Secretary of State locked up, your Attorney General locked up, your governor locked up, and then you got your legislatures too that are all buying into that lie. Trust me, there will be no fair elections.
Mhm.
You gotta be looking at who's on that ballot, and it's time out for saying, oh, I don't really like that person or something to that effect. No, you need to look at the voting record and what they stand for as it relates to access to those ballots, and honoring democracy and what's at stake here in order for us to remain a democracy.
Yeah.
So that's important as well.
Val, you mentioned Attorney General, and I tried last week to cover some of the things that happened with Miranda rights. And I'm just interested on your take on that. I know you've got other things that you're going to cover, but I mean, talk to us a little bit about the Supreme Court ruling and how you see the importance of these attorney generals and stuff like that.
Well, the attorney generals, and it's funny because I was trying to pull out something and I didn't have enough time, but they were talking about, um, even within, I want to say within Michigan too, because I did pull out a few things as it relates to some of the things in Michigan. But, you have some prosecutors. Actually, the injunction that's been in place in Michigan, I can use that. um there was an injunction that dealt with that stopped the 1931 law from going into effect. And then there was an injunction. However, it did not cover. They thought the injunction covered attorney generals and prosecutors,
Hmm.
but it turned out that it did not really cover prosecutors. It covered the injunctions would stop, of course, and we have an attorney general that definitely supports reproductive freedom. um but now the a lower court basically dissolved the injunction, and then there had to be another court proceeding where that happened today or yesterday, where a circuit court basically reinstituted the injunction. So that way, you did not have prosecutors that could go, if this law went into effect, and start to begin prosecuting individuals. Now, we do have prosecutors who basically have said, our own Wayne County prosecutor has said they will not be prosecuting anybody that runs afoul of a law. That's just not something she's going to do. There's a couple of other prosecutors, but then, there are other prosecutors that said, hey, I will do that. That's not my choice.
Mhm.
Something to that effect. So that right there shows you that, when you're talking about injunctions and the law and who can do what, and you need to look at the fact of what is happening, because this particular law that we're trying to do in Michigan is not just a law, but it's a constitutional amendment. Okay, they are trying to change the Constitution in the state of Michigan, so that reproductive freedom. So for example, in Michigan, the reproductive freedom for all would establish a constitutional right to reproductive care in Michigan, and that would include contraception, sterilization, and abortion. And the state would have the ability to still regulate abortions after fetal viability, but only when it does not harm the patient's physical and mental health. That's really like the long and short of what they're trying to do with this constitutional change. And they basically have, of course, the signatures now to put this on the ballot in November. So what they did is they got an overwhelming support of signatures. I think they got like something like 200,000 more signatures than what they needed in order to get this on the ballot. So what now is happening is you have the board of canvassers that are, or the State Bureau of Elections, that are looking at the signatures. They have until September 9th to review all the signatures submitted and certify the constitutional amendment initiatives so that they qualify to be on the November ballot. So right now, they got and are celebrating getting these huge amount of signatures, and now you have the verification of the signatures happening now to put them on the ballot. The fact that they got so many more over what they needed it will be on the ballot. I would be surprised if it's not on the ballot. And so those are the kinds of things, and we'll come back and talk about that, Marcus, as September 9th comes and we see if it's certified, then we can talk about what that amendment will look like. And really, if it goes on the ballot, if it's certified, the abortion rights, and there's some election initiatives, I'll talk about that too, would there be appear on the ballot, and a simple majority of voters, just more than 50%, must vote in favor of the proposal for them to become law. And if you have 51%, that initiative will become law, and it takes effect 45 days after the election day. Wow. That's how quickly it will happen. So there's also on the Michigan ballot, there's also a voting, and let me take a look at that. There's also a voting initiative amendment on the ballot too that deals with voting rights. And so this particular initial is Promote the Vote 2022. This would expand voter access in Michigan. It would allow 9 days of early voting, publicly subsidized absentee ballots, and a tracking system for the ballot location. It will continue to allow registered voters without a state ID to sign an affidavit attesting their identity. It will allow public sources and charities to fund elections, subject to disclosure rules. It will allow voters to register for absentee ballots for all future elections. Now we got to do it election by election by election. Right. Okay. It will require ballot drop boxes for every 15,000 voters in a municipality. And it will establish that post-election audits can only be conducted by state and local officials. Well, we got to be careful who those state and local officials will be. Right. And it will require canvasser boards to certify election results based only on the official vote counts. So that's on the ballot they got enough signatures as well, and their signatures are being reviewed as well. But what's already on the ballot for November 8th? There is something already that doesn't have to do this. The state legislature did this, and it is a constitutional amendment to reform term limits
Hmm.
and require financial disclosures for lawmakers and other statewide elected officials. So, some people are saying that there was an original version, and the state legislature, which we know they are prone to do, beat this one particular group to the punch. And so they're actually still trying to do some things, but not until 2024. But the measure, which is they say it's kind of a watered down one, but I don't know. It would cap the total years a lawmaker can serve in the state legislature to 12 years,
Hmm.
regardless of what chamber they are in. And it also will require state lawmakers and certain executive officials of the state to disclose personal financial information, such as sources of income and assets. So that's another thing that's already going to be on the ballot in November. Those are very important initiatives to think about and know, and get people out here to vote
Yeah.
on those particular amendments.
Yes. You had mentioned some about the judiciary, and I think maybe you have something on payday loans as well.
So I thought that there was a payday loan, and I had to go check it out. It did not make it to the ballot.
Oh,
So
okay.
what they were trying to do is they were trying to cap the amount of interest on payday loans, and they did not get enough signatures to make it to the ballot. So you probably still will see that at some point,
Mhm.
but so that didn't happen. But I did want to talk about elections that are coming up, judicial elections. Um, and I know you have folks that are not just in Michigan. So one of the things that is important is that, as you know, there are state supreme courts, and those are generally the last court of resort. And there are those intermediate appellate courts. So, we have the Court of Appeals here. They're named different things in different communities, but they're those intermediate appellate courts before you get to the Supreme Court, or the highest court in the state. So currently, for elections in November of 2022, there are 86 Supreme Court seats up for grabs across
Wow.
this country.
Wow.
There are 299 immediate appellate court seats up for grabs in this country.
Wow.
And so I actually was able, and so there are various ways, methods, and selections of how people get to the ballot and get on the ballot. In Michigan, they say it's nonpartisan, but really, there are election folks that are, there are jurists who are backed by Republicans and backed by Democrats, and actually even are, suggested by their state parties and that kind of thing. So we know it's supposed to be nonpartisan. They're elected by the people, and candidates are listed on the ballot without a party designation. But you do know who is supporting what candidate.
Mhm.
That's not lost on anyone.
Mhm.
And then, of course, you have people that are appointed by the governor, to vacant seats. And then they usually have to run for election. Then you have folks that have a merit. There are some people, I guess in Missouri, they have what's called a merit selection,
Hmm.
and a nominating commission is what gives all of the names to the governor, and the governor appoints off of this list.
Hmm.
So those of you who are in Missouri, I do believe this commission is elected. And so you need to be looking at who's on this commission that's going to be referring names to the governor, and who's your governor,
Mhm.
and who will be on these in these judicial seats.
Mhm.
Because appellate courts hear criminal appeals and civil appeals.
Mhm.
So very important. And then there's what's called they call it retention election, where a governor may select you for a particular part of a term, but then you have to run to be retained in the seat.
Mhm.
So there's all kinds of different ways in which people can be elected, but really the important thing is uh, to go out there and vote, and not just on name recognition, not just on name recognition. And it's a little harder to get information on judicial candidates. It really is, and that's something that maybe this forum can kind of look at for people. But there are a lot of people, a lot of seats up to grabs. But in the state of Michigan, we are going to have two people that are going to be on the ballot for the Supreme Court. You have Richard Bernstein, who is a Democrat, okay, and he does have someone that possibly will be challenging him, and that person's name is Kyra Harris Bolden. She is running as a Democrat, just like him, and actually will be seeking I think the backing of the Democratic convention for this Supreme Court in August 21st, 2022. And then, of course, you have Brian Zara. He also is a long-term um, Republican um, jurist. I will tell you, my very first jury trial was in front of Judge Brian Zara, and I liked him, but I like Bernstein too. And so he has elevated himself from, circuit court, appellate court. Now he's on the Supreme Court. So we have two Supreme Court justices that are going to be elected in the fall. And we had some primary runoffs for judges in Wayne County, I believe, this time around. And so they will be, some folks that are on the ballot that we will be voting for as well. So those are some key things that I kind of pulled together that I thought were important for us to remember. There's the judges that are making decisions for your life. People just cannot. And I think we now kind of see the importance of who we have, of course, in the White House, but who we have on these in the Senate who pretty much nominates, even though I don't think that's what the Constitution requires, but have the votes. We don't have the votes in the Senate right now to block these people. If we control the vote, Amy Coney Barrett would not have even had the opportunity to even be considered for that court. And I want you to think about, and there's in other discussions, there's some discussions out there regarding the tenure of Supreme Court justices. Those things are being looked at. Interestingly enough, that's another interesting conversation for another day. But, these are people who are in their 40s, 50s, like 50s. And you think about a Justice Breyer or Ruth Gator Ginsburg, who left in their 80s. I mean, they are there for a lifetime.
A lifetime.
So if you're having a kid right now, that person will still be on the Supreme Court, that they have already put in stone precedent that affects your newborn child's life in the future.
Yeah.
And so we, now we kind of know the importance of why it's important, why, you got to have the ability in the Senate, our Senate, to be able to nominate, or not nominate, but to confer and to pass these folks to the Judiciary Commission committee for the Supreme Court. It's and if you didn't get a chance, it's grueling now. We have people that are definitely the Ketanji Brown, who just got on the court. She's a superior jurist compared to two that were just put on. And look at what it took, and what she had to take in order to get on the Supreme Court. So these are all things that we need to, to think about, and when we're making decisions of who we vote for, it is very important for us to look at the state, the local. I almost say the state and the local are far more important than, the federal. They're all important, but, it has the greatest impact on your daily life. What happens in this legislature? Let's think about it. The Supreme Court just overruled a 50-year precedent over, and now put that back in the hands of the state. So your state legislatures are now making laws as it relates to reproductive freedom. Not the Supreme Court, not the president. The president has done some things through executive orders, but those don't last. That's not law. When he goes, they go.
They go. Yep. We're talking to Val Colbert-Osamuede. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back as a close, what should people do and how should they reach out to their families in states where the primaries are yet to come? So Michigan is closing out our primary, but I got folks in other states. So what should I be telling them and what should they be preparing for? We'll be right back after this.
Okay.
Hi, this is Darren inviting you to join me for Love in the Scriptures, Wednesday, 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Love and Stuff platform. We were challenged last week to measure ourselves against the attributes or the conduct or the ways of love in the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13. How well did you do? Reread the chapter and join me 6 o'clock p.m. Wednesday. Love in the Scriptures on Love and Stuff. See you then.
See you then. You want to join us tomorrow at 6 with Darren. He's doing an excellent job with our third show, which is Love in the Scriptures. And I am with Val Colbert-Osamuede, who will be back with us hopefully once a month. Love for the love of justice. And if you've been listening, you're like me. You're just here like a sponge gathering all of this information. And not only because I voted today and I was number 6 in my precinct, and I've tried to get other people to vote, but I have family in other states whose primaries are coming up. So Val, as we go to a close, what should I be telling my family? What should people whose primaries are coming up be gearing themselves up to do?
Gearing themselves up to vote, actually go to the polls or get a absentee ballot or dropping off your ballot in the ballot box, or that's there. But it is not too late to educate yourself on those that are running. It is not too late to see, okay, do I have a Secretary of State? That's a key, very key office now. Very key. Is that up for election? If not, okay. You may even want to think of the future as to when. And then are there some people out there that might run for that seat? But that's, down the road. I would be looking at the key offices in that state. Is there a governor that's running? Republicans hold most of the governor's seats in the state, in the United States right now. The legislature as well. So do we have the opportunity? Do I have the opportunity to vote in support? And I say support not only with your vote, but with your finances too. And we're not talking about you got to give hundreds of dollars, or thousands of dollars. But these candidates now they reach goals on $5, $10. If you can give $10, $20 or what have you, give that to a candidate across the country. I've given to candidates that, are not going to be, directly impacting me, but definitely impact other people like me in other communities. Mm-hmm. So, so if you just are just looking at your own place, your own home, you want to look at your local elections. Who's running for your city council? Who's running for your city clerk? Who's running for, your county prosecutor, which is very important. Those of us who are caring about criminal justice, our prosecutor makes the difference. Who's running for mayor? Or is the mayor in your community more ceremonial, and should you be looking more at who's the city manager? Those kinds of things. So you really got to look at the structure of your government. But just say you have a strong mayor like we do, you want to look at that, because those people impact your day-to-day life. And then you want to look at who's running on these judicial tickets. That's a little harder, I will admit, but there are ways, again, where you can find out who the candidate is. You can go online and Google this person. You can see who has endorsed them. And I mean, in terms of, bar associations. I'm not necessarily talking about, civic groups, which are nice, but, do bar people, do bar associations, are they judging them to be qualified? And I'm not just talking about the ABA. I'm talking about for example, there are black bar associations in the state of Michigan. It's the Wolverine Bar Association. So you want to look at those things when you're looking at candidates, other people of color, and I'm not necessarily of color, because the Wolverine Bar Association endorses all judicial candidates. They look at all judicial candidates. So you want to take a look at those kind of selections when you're talking about the judiciary, not just name recognition. Not a lot of times when it's the judges, you look, oh, okay, they're an incumbent, so let me just go ahead and put them back in the office. Well, that might not be the best thing. Okay, so, or if you're lucky enough to know somebody that's in the law, ask them what they think. It's nothing, and we love to talk. Lawyers love to talk, and they love to tell you about their experiences in front of a judge. So those are the things that you can kind of tap into. And you know what? Have your church, or if you have a civic organization, a neighborhood organization, ask the candidate to come and speak to your neighbors. Have those living room kind of backyard. I mean, here it's getting a little cold. It's going to be cold soon. But, you can have those backyard forums where 20 people, or so can come, and candidates are out there. They're grassroots now, and coming out there knocking on doors. Everybody doesn't have the backing of a lot of dollars, so they will come to those things. And those, it's all kinds of online forums now. So you should be, really looking at locally who's running. And then you also, very important, you want to know who is going to be your federal representatives in the Senate and in the House, because there are a lot of great things that are on the Democratic agenda. And obviously you can see I'm a Democrat, but I lean more towards, a little towards independent as opposed to party lines. But I can just say there are so many things in the Democratic package that is helpful to all walks of life. And I mean that sincerely. The elderly, the disabled, the veterans, our children who are in poverty, programs to lift them up, daycare, subsidized daycare, increased parental leave, all of those things that make other industrialized nations great places to live, and people have a quality of life, and they are ranked among the best to be the quality of life. These are the kinds of things that I would encourage. I would encourage you to, to just start locally and then expand. And don't be afraid to have a candidate come for 20 people. So what? It's 20 more people. If you have a candidate that you believe in, and you can get them to come and talk to 20 of your friends and family, that's 20 people he or she has touched. So, or they have touched. So those are the things that I would encourage people to do. It is not too late to get involved. If you missed the primary, if you still got the local election, of course you got to deal with whoever is on that ticket right now. But so be it. You go out there and vote with who's on that ticket. But if you have a primary election, you want to look at who's running. In the state of Michigan, you only can, you can't kind of like shift back and forth. But some states do have that, where you can kind of cherry pick who you want to, vote for in the election. And so, but you definitely want to have candidates, of course, that stand for, your beliefs and your what you think best suits your community. I'm not a single issue person. there are a lot of candidates or some people who are vote on one single issue. I can't do that because there's so many other things that touch other people's lives that, I may not agree with everything a candidate, and it may be one single issue that I live or die by, but there may be other things that this candidate stands for that I think is good for the community and the nation as a whole. And when I say the nation as a whole, because everything connects to everything, you know. And so even your city council president connects to something nationally. And so those are the kinds of things that I would encourage people to do. Get to know your candidate, call them, get their literature. And if you can go to these forums, go. And there's so many things online that don't even require you to leave your living room or your bedroom if you want to stretch out in your bedroom and watch things. So that's what, for me, the biggest thing is just to educate yourself on the issues and how it impacts your community and how it will impact you really for years to come.
Valerie Colbert-Osamuede, thank you so much. And I am so excited for this featured edition of Love and Stuff. As I said, you are a gem within our community, and you have shared a load of information that we can all put to use. Some of the things that really jumped out at me, because I don't know if people are thinking about the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the prosecutors, pivotal positions and offices that sometimes we don't go to the polls about. We go to the polls because we want to elect a president. Sometimes we want to elect a governor, but we don't think about that Secretary of State and holding the gate on elections. We don't look at it, even though in this time, as so eloquently articulated, that these hearings have shown us what people standing up and saying, hey, there was no fraud in this election, but having people who are true to who have a proven record for integrity and standing up and holding the line is an important consideration. And reading the issues, understanding that they're going to try to throw the words in there all kind of ways.
Yes.
So make sure that you understand what they're saying. Every time that they're saying, would you want this, might mean that you don't. You got to read through the issues and see that they might be trying to deceive you with the wording. You got to read through it thoroughly. You got to educate yourself. I think you were going to say something else before we
I
go.
want to just bring to everybody's attention that there's some really good information coming out, and I'm saying that about the January 6th. And we have people that are running for office that did some pretty shady things on January 6th, that are running for elected office, that were directly connected to that insurrection on January 6th. And I say that because this is democracy. This is the democratic process. And I mean democratic with a little d, not Democratic Party. But this is the democratic process that is in peril. And I that can't be underscored enough. And whether you're Republican, Democratic, Independent, I can't think of the other libertarian, whatever that case may be, it all hinges on the ability for us to freely exercise the right to vote, to put people in office that the electorate puts in office. And this is not a dictatorship. This is not, well, some people might say we're verging on an authoritative government, but quite frankly, right now we still have democratic institutions that are holding. But we got to be careful. And so, you need to look at who has been impacted, and I'm saying that nationally, who has been involved with that whole incident on January 6th. There's actually, and the name escapes me, I'm so sorry. There's somebody on our ballot in Michigan who was directly connected with the January 6th insurrection and is facing some criminal charges related to that. Do we really want to vote that person in office? So, there's so many things we need to be looking at, especially that. And so that's what I wanted to say. Let's look at, these candidates, and what are they standing for? Um, what are they standing for? What are they actually standing for? Even if they're not, you know, the candidate of your dreams, are they standing for what makes this country something that, at least we can work with? Okay. We may not have the full benefits, and I say that truly because we don't all have the full benefits, but it is something, what we always like to say, a work in progress. And we don't need to be taken back to nostalgic days where we didn't count.
Yes. As my dad would say, we are a whole person.
That's right.
Take your whole soul. He would say, get up and wash your tail. Tail is not the word he would use, but get up and wash your tail and take yourself to the poll,
Yes.
because your vote matters. Lift
Yes.
every voice and vote. Join us on this journey of taking this lift every voice and vote to every hamlet, I want to say. Now I feel like Dr. King, to every place where people may not be thinking about the importance of their vote or significance of it. And as Valerie Colbert-Osamuede has said to us, if they're fighting to take it away, there must be a reason why. There must be some power in your vote. So harness that power. And even if your primary has already happened, prepare yourself for November and prepare to spread the word to all of your family, friends, and colleagues that are across other states that are entering their primaries, to remind them it's not just about voting the president. It's about voting and being engaged right where you are. It's love and stuff. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Val, so much for joining us. What a great show. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.